Hello and happy Wednesday, everybody. Here's what's coming up tonight on News Center Now. The tip credit. You guys have a lot of questions. They're talking about it in Augusta today. We'll get you some answers.
Plus, first responders in Maine could actually have a little bit more help when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder.
And there was a 19-year-old from Massachusetts who told the FBI about those stolen Tom Brady jerseys. We will talk to him.
This is News Center Now.
Everybody, welcome to News Center Now on this Wednesday. I'm Lee Goldberg.
And I'm Amanda Hill. It's probably going to be a late night in Augusta as restaurant workers talk tips and the minimum wage. Lawmakers are hearing arguments about restoring the tip credit, the reduced hourly wage for restaurant workers who also earn tips.
The credit will be phased out under the minimum wage law that was passed by voters last fall. If it's Augusta, it's Don Kerrigan, and that's where he is. This has been an ongoing discussion. Don, what happened today?
Well, today was a continuation, maybe in a big form, of a lot of the debates we've been hearing over since last fall. There was a big crowd here, well over 100, maybe as many as 200 showed up, and a lot of them are still here because they're still waiting for people to testify. This tip credit issue has people in the restaurant business stirred up, that's for sure, on both sides. And, you know, you're hearing kind of two versions of what's going on. Here's the basic argument. As we've reported before, in January, the hourly wage for people who earn tips, servers and bartenders, went up to $5 an hour. It will continue to increase $1 each year until it reaches $12, the same as the minimum wage for everyone else. Now, restaurant servers and owners say that's going to drive up the cost to the restaurants each of those years, forcing them to raise prices. Servers say they worry that fewer people may eat out as a result, that tips will be decreased, and that as a result, their incomes will go down too. Owners say the higher costs may force them to cut back on some staff, make other changes, maybe even switch over to computers like some of the chain restaurants do. But supporters of the new minimum wage law, which put all this into place, say the tip credit system is unfair. They say everyone should be earning the same minimum wage. And they say many servers, people who get tips, struggle to make enough money to make a decent living, and that higher wages would help. But once again today, we heard comments from a number of restaurant people saying that servers routinely earn $20 and $30 an hour in tips. So you hear some very different stories in this.
All right, Don Kerrigan in Augusta tonight. Thank you very much for that. All right, you guys have questions as well, obviously, about this. Joyce wrote us in an email and wants to know how tips get reported, if they actually do get reported, and how accurately they get reported. So we sent Chris, because that's what Chris does.
Right.
He finds things out.
I did my best, yeah. So we looked into a couple of these questions. And the first thing is the IRS. Federal law requires servers to report their tips, and every month you have to report your tips if it's more than $20, and servers use a form just like this. It's called a 4070. Now, the other question here is, how accurately are these tips reported? So we asked Greg Dougal from the Maine Restaurant Association. He says that 70% of all restaurant charges are on credit cards. So it's more than that, so as long as at least one server appropriately reports their cash tips. And we also wanted to know if servers are ever held accountable for reporting it accurately. Dougal says that restaurants are audited on a regular basis for these reports, and by virtue, employees are subject to the same. So what other questions do you have? Feel free to email them to us at asknow@WCSH6 or WLBZ2.com, or you can use the hashtag AskNow on our News Center Now Facebook page. Plenty of more questions coming with all the tip credit hearings going on.
Absolutely.
All right, Coco, thank you very much. Augusta, a busy place. Another big issue being discussed today, the so-called death with dignity law. We started talking about this on Monday. It's something a lot of people feel passionate about. The bill would allow doctors to prescribe a medication to patients who are diagnosed with 6 months or less to live. The Maine Medical Association, which represents hundreds of physicians, says its members are split on the issue. This week, we've also been talking about the cost of dying and things that people might not know about funeral services in our state.
Yesterday, we introduced you to a man in Waterville who chose to take care of funeral arrangements for his wife at home instead of going through the average funeral director. Coming up at 6 o'clock, Tennyson Coleman speaks with a funeral consumer advocate who shared some little-known tips about life after death. Now, one thing they talked about is what happens to a person's digital information that's stored online. A bill going through the state legislature addresses that, what happens to that digital information, and who might have access to it.
It's about the afterlife of your digital information. And who owns that? It's the kind of thing, again, that the more you can think about that individually ahead of time, the better.
The bill sounds like a way for the state to catch up with the times as the internet has changed the way we store information and view privacy over time. Hey, another great day out there, and we've got a big storm headed our way. What's going on, Keith?
Hits keep on coming, guys. This one, though, will be a rainstorm. You can see the last vestiges of our storm from yesterday moving on out. And here's our next storm. Big circular rotation here. Severe weather outbreak, actually pretty major, down across Georgia and parts of South Carolina. That'll be ongoing through the evening. By the time the storm gets to us tomorrow, there'll be no severe weather with it, but there'll be a whole lot of rain, and it will be a straight rain event. Maybe 15-20 minutes of freezing rain to start in the mountains. That will be tomorrow mid-morning, but look how quickly we go over to rain. It starts between 10 a.m. and noon over southern Maine, between noon and 3 p.m. over central Maine, and the heaviest rain for sure happens late afternoon, early evening. Here we are at 6:30. That's just pumping in moisture from the Gulf of Maine. Really heavy stuff coming down through around 11 or 12 over down east, and then we should clear out for Friday. See over an inch of rain in most spots. A little bit of flooding concern, particularly over southern Maine. That's why we have these flash flood watches in effect. Not all bad news, guys. We do have a warm-up to talk about in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Keith. Hey, shoe lovers, listen up. Fewer options when it comes to discounted shoes here in Maine.
Say it ain't so.
I know, right?
Adrian Stein here to tell us about the closings, which aren't funny, announced today.
All right. Well, we are talking about Payless. In fact, the company does plan to close 4 stores in Maine. Payless filing for bankruptcy protection, closing 400 stores in all. That includes these locations. They're in Bangor, Biddeford, Presque Isle, and Ellsworth. You see them there on your screen. Some stores are staying open in Maine. You will find that on our websites. Of course, this comes as Sears, Macy's, and Kmart have all announced plans to close stores in Maine in the last 4 months or so. Here's more news now that we're working on. Portland police say they have now responded to 5 suspected overdoses in just about 24 hours. None were deadly, and most of the people were given Narcan to reverse those effects. Police do not think these ODs are related. An alarming discovery for a retired pastor in Waterville who found a KKK flyer in his driveway. Now, it appears to be identical to the ones that showed up in Freeport and Augusta in January. Police got at least 6 reports of KKK flyers this week around Western Avenue and Pleasant Street. On a lighter note, former Coney High School and UMaine women's basketball star Amy Vachon will stay on as the interim coach of the Black Bears. Vachon started in January. Of course, that was when head coach Richard Barron took the indefinite medical leave. We do know now that he will be out for at least a year, and we will hear from Coach Vachon tonight on News Center at 6 o'clock. Guys, back to you.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Coming up, first responders could have a little more help when it comes to dealing with PTSD.
We're going to tell you about a bill they're working on to change how first responders are treated and have a live interview with a first responder and a man helping them with the law next on Now.
We've been eating, concentrating, I was angry, but I just basically became a shut-in.
What Chris Matthews is describing has since been diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by his job as a firefighter. But it took nearly 4 years before he got any acknowledgement that it was caused by his work. That's something that could be changing thanks to a bill that's cleared its first hurdle in the Maine legislature. Yesterday, the Labor Committee unanimously passed LD 848, an act to support law enforcement officers and first responders diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, if a first responder is diagnosed with PTSD and the doctor says it came from the job, job, it would be considered a work-related injury and covered under workers' compensation. It's a fight that's only just beginning here in Maine as we learn more about the scars these jobs leave mentally. But Russian officials have a better system in place. In fact, some are working right now with a few departments in southern Maine, and we are joined by one of those experts, psychologist Ekaterina Maximova and Lieutenant Joe Carroll with Westbrook Fire. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll start with you, Katya. What exactly do you see in some of the men who come and talk to you?
Can be different symptoms. For example, after accidents, humans think a lot about this situation, and always it's with the stress. Or, for example, he afraid to be in the place which reminds him that situation. Or he afraid, for example, to be with the people who remind him the same this situation, that situation. Or he can't sleep, for example, or he have very bad dreams when he sleep, and other symptoms.
You were talking about how it affects and some of the things that you guys are seeing too.
Yeah, for us, the average person in America has a life-changing event typically once in their lifetime. For emergency responders, they can have up to a dozen and make it very hard to respond to emergency events because they're very similar and they remind you time after time.
So right now, Maine doesn't necessarily have a program in place, but with your program, it's a lot about prevention, it sounds like?
It's like this, because we work together with the rescues, with the firefighters, for whole day. We are in the same building, and the first part, we choose them. They choose the candidates before they started to work. And are they ready, mentally ready? How's it mentally? Not really, not just physically.
We have to start the hiring process.
Yeah, and in the beginning, it's very important to make right decision, the right choice. And after we work with them all time, I think we work together in the difficult accidents, or we always together. We have consulting, we have debriefing after difficult accidents, and I can see them full day because I'm in the same building, same place. They come to me to have a consultation. I can ask him, "Oh no, guys, now you have to come to me, and it's okay for our service." And but of course it's better to make prevention than to work with it really with the symptoms, with the full syndrome.
Mm-hmm. So beginning, middle, and end.
Yes, of course.
So you're learning from this program, obviously, but
Absolutely.
Right now with this bill moving forward in the committee, what does that mean for you?
Well, first and foremost, it removes the stigma around PTSD, which makes it difficult for responders to want to go seek help when they need to. In the months of January and February alone in the nation, 12 responders committed suicide due to the stresses involved with the job. And they have a great prevention program from the time of their hiring in emergency incidents and throughout the course of their day and their work. So we can learn a lot from our counterparts.
So lots to learn and lots to watch for with this bill.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for coming in and talking. Lee?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. When we come back, Keith gets wet and wild with his forecast. It's a slip and slide. Stay with us.
Imagine knowing what will be delivered right to your mailbox before you even finish your morning cup of coffee. Well, brace yourselves because snail mail is going digital. Informed Delivery is a brand new feature from the United States Postal Service. Emailed pictures of the actual mail that will be delivered to you that night. Now, it's an optional service that you can sign up for beginning April 14th. You can also access a dashboard on their website from your computer, tablet, mobile device, where those pictures are stored for 7 days. Now, packages and oversized envelopes are not included. Informed Delivery first started as a test in Virginia in 2014 and expanded to parts of New York City and Connecticut, and a survey showed that 90% of people who were using the tool were checking it every day and loved it. So they decided to roll it out nationwide. Now, Chad says, call me lazy, but I'll check my email to see if I need to stop at the mailbox. Good idea. I'm right with you, Chad. But Edward asks a great question. If the Postal Service is losing so much money, why are they spending money to offer this, and is it offered in our area? Well, the answer to that is that this is a totally free service. The USPS, as part of their automated sorting process, already takes these pictures. So the only additional thing that they're really doing is just emailing them out to you. And yes, it will be offered here in Maine. Now, Michelle thinks it's a bad idea in so many ways. Obviously, there are a ton of privacy and security concerns. On our website, we have a link to all of the answers of the frequently asked questions.
That was my question. What about the security? Like, I don't want my mail coming to my email.
Well, plus, what if you get a surprise for someone in your home, and then they log on to the email, and then they see that it's coming, and well, then there goes my surprise. So
it's hit or miss, and it's optional.
I'll go to the mailbox.
In terms of security, though, I feel like for me, we already trust apps and all these things with our bank information. So for me, it's really not that much of a.
I can't wait to see my Bed Bath & Beyond 10% off coupon before I actually get it.
That's
pretty much what I get.
You get 10%,
at this point.
I'm going to be ordering mops from Amazon.
In case you need that shower caddy.
Thanks to you.
It's going to be great. Gonna be nasty.
I'm going to get a wet back.
This week is just not very good. That's the bottom line. But the weekend, I think, will make up for it into next week. Here's our storm system. Pretty nasty looking low right here. And it's associated severe weather. A really big severe weather outbreak ongoing with tornadoes here in through parts of metro Atlanta right now under a tornado warnings up and through the Carolinas as well. So a very potent storm system. For us, of course, we're not going to be talking about tornadoes or severe weather this time of the year, but this will be a big rainmaker. It's a big wrapped up low, and as it moves in tomorrow, it sits over us and produces quite a bit of rain, and really almost no mixing with this at all. It's going to be so warm at the mid and low levels of the atmosphere that the mountains will briefly see a little freezing rain, and then even the highest elevation will change over to rain by tomorrow afternoon. How much rain are we talking about? Well, about an inch in most spots, between 3/4 and an inch. And that's a sizable amount of rain, but it should be just below the criteria in a lot of cases for really kind of widespread flooding. So we may see some what we call urban flooding and small stream flooding, but I don't expect that we'll see widespread flood concerns. National Weather Service on board with this just has flash flood watches here and down across southern New England, but you're not seeing the flood watches across much of Maine, a large percentage of Maine not under the flood watch. Not a very pretty graphic here, but want to show you what this is. It's called flash flood guidance. So the National Weather Service basically takes into account how much rain we've had, what the soil moisture is, what the soil composition is, and tells us in 6 hours how much rain would we need to cause flooding. And for a lot of Maine, we're in 4 or 5 inches that we would need to cause flooding. Even in these green areas here, we're talking about 3 or 4 inches necessary, and we're just not going to get that out of this upcoming storm. So that's the bad news. It's going to be pretty nasty as we head into tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, into Friday morning. Here's the good news. We still have a strong ridging signal for Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and that will bring in not only pleasant conditions, but warm air. Monday looks mild, temperatures in the 60s. Tuesday looks very mild as well, with a chance at 70 degrees. Not a lock yet for 70, but there's still a pretty good chance that it will happen. So after a nasty rainstorm, we see a few scattered showers on Friday, and then Saturday just a sprinkle, but most of us will be dry. Sunday's gorgeous, Monday's more gorgeous, Tuesday's the gorgeousest, and and the only thing that concerns me about Tuesday as far as 70, as I said to you guys before, baseline absolute minimum 55, 60 degrees. But you know how it goes this time of the year. You can get those what are called backdoor cold fronts. So I'm just not going to lock anything in until we get a little closer. But definitely a nice signal for next week.
I'm writing it on my calendar as Frolic Day.
You put the 7 out there. That was big.
I know. Well, I
definitely
think there's a possibility.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Hey, the 19-year-old kid who helped find Tom Brady's stolen jerseys. We'll chat with him coming up.
All right, today's Brain Drops relates to tornadoes because there's a tornado outbreak going on in Georgia and parts of the Carolinas right now. Let me show you a tweet here first before we get to this picture that is from a tornado outbreak that occurred on Monday, and there we're showing you right there. This is a sign
oh my gosh.
drilled into a tree, and what's interesting about this is an EF1 tornado, so the second weakest kind of tornado that exists. And you'd be amazed at the power of even these low-end tornadoes. And to that point, if we come back to the monitor, this is a picture I took in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. This is an EF2, so it goes all the way up to EF5. EF2, this used to be a trailer park home.
Holy
all
cow.
of these. used to be a field of trailer parks. So it just gives you an idea of the power of these tornadoes. And when you hear, oh, it was a low-end EF2 or you know, a EF1, it can still do this kind of damage. And I think a lot of Mainers, luckily we don't deal with this very often.
Yeah, I'll take a nor'easter.
Right.
That's exactly my point
Yeah.
in all of this, is that you'd rather mud season than this.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks,
All right,
Kate.
sir.
All right.
Hey, remember Tom Brady's stolen Super Bowl jerseys? A 19-year-old from Seattle says he was instrumental in helping the FBI track down the man who had them.
Dylan Wagner is a sports memorabilia collector. He says that he sold a jersey to Martin Mauricio Ortega. They later shared photos of their collections. Ortega's photos contained Brady's Super Bowl 49 jersey. That's when Wagner says he started calling the Houston police, the NFL, the Patriots, and the FBI.
It's incredible, you know, growing up, Brady's, you know, sort of been my hero, being able to watch the games and collect jerseys and stuff like that. And now to be, you know, essentially in a way Brady's hero in, you know, some aspect, it's incredible.
And Dylan is from Massachusetts, hence his love for Brady.
Right.
We reached out to the FBI to confirm that Dylan was one of the ones who tipped them off. They could not confirm or deny his involvement. And Wagner said that nobody from the Patriots has reached out to him yet, but good for him getting those jerseys back.
Yeah, I mean, good on him for not trying to get them for himself, too.
Hey,
I
how much
guess.
do you want for it? All right, that's it for us. News Center 530 coming up next.